Hey everyone, my name is Olga and I'm happy to see you here in this new video. And today we're gonna try a new eyeshadow palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills, which is called Spice. If you're interested in sugar in this beautiful palette, a review should be already available on my channel, so you can check it out. And by the way, this eye makeup look is done using only this sugar palette. Back to Spice. Right now we are gonna see swatches, we are gonna do 3 makeup looks, and as well you're gonna see how eyeshadows behave during the day. And of course we are gonna discuss everything. Let's start. Time for the first look using lovely Spice palette, and today we're gonna do smoky eyes. I think at least that we are gonna do it, and I wanna try these 3 shades, or no, this guy. We're gonna try this topper. These 2 guys I'm gonna try a little bit later, and I have some thoughts about them. We are gonna start from this particular shade. It's slightly shimmery and I think it might be a little bit dusty, but we're gonna find out it quite soon. Unexpectedly, no, it's not dusty at all. This shade I'm gonna use as a crease shade, and this guy, it seems it's slightly darker than this one, so I'm gonna use it near the lash line. And of course, this beautiful topper I'm gonna use in the center. So let's start, and we are gonna start from the darkest shade from the palette. I'm impressed it's not dusty, because in most of the cases such textures, they are dusty. On this side I'm gonna use an eyeshadow base, and on this side, nope. So let's start. Starting from the center. Oh, pigmentation is quite good. I hope that these shimmers won't fall off, but we'll see. Grabbing a little bit more and applying this shade till the crease, and a little bit higher. Of course, I'm gonna apply it in the outer corner as well and on the lower lid. And for doing this, I need another brush. Quite easy to blend and seems not patchy. Changing the brush, and I'm gonna use this beautiful shade as a crease shade. And this shade is slightly dusty. Starting blending the edge. Doing it carefully. Now I'm gonna use slightly satin powder for blending the edge right here, because I don't wanna keep everything as it is and wanna slightly smudge this line. In the inner corner I'm gonna add this beautiful highlighter from Golden Rose. Now in the center I'm gonna add this lovely shade. Near the lash line and in the waterline I'm gonna add an eyeliner from Essence in shade Fight, and gonna blend it slightly. Now I'm gonna use the darker shade from the palette for blending this eyeliner slightly. Final look, and let me quickly tell you what I've used today on lips. As a lip liner, Luxe Visage shade 66, a lipstick from Essence Up Limited Edition in shade 2, and a lip gloss from Fenty Beauty in shade Fussy. And I think it looks nicely. I mean, this lip combo plus this eye look. Okay, let's quickly discuss what we have tried today. I've tried 4 shades, and it seems they're okay, but I think that I can do this look using some other eyeshadows. Actually, I think that these two shades are more or less the same, but we have here shimmers, here we don't have any shimmers. And that's the only difference, actually. So you can use one or the other. This one is slightly darker, just simply slightly. And I would say that these two shades, a kind of a mix of red and brown, but the main shade is brown, and brown is more visible. And by the way, this particular shade may slightly stuck, and you may see harsh lines right here. I wasn't able to fully mix it with this particular shade. By the way, this shade is slightly warm and it has a bit of red. It appears a little bit pink in the palette, but in real life it appears a little bit of pink plus orange and a bit of red on eyelid. So bear in mind, especially if you have cold undertone. I like this particular shade. It looks more like topper and would work nicely as a topper. Of course, you can use it as a general metallic shade, but I think that in this case it may slightly emphasize skin texture. And let me slightly layer it right here. Actually, it's okay. You know what? It reminds me formula from Natasha Denona, which is called Crystal. So I think it's quite familiar. They are quite familiar. But these shades from Natasha or from Anastasia, they are slightly drier, I think. Anyway, let's take a look how this beauty behaves during the day. But first of all, I'm gonna show you my makeup extremely closely, and we're gonna see each other in evening. I have my makeup on 12 hours, and now we are gonna check everything out. On this side I've used an eyeshadow base and everything looks perfectly, but unfortunately some shimmers may fall off. This side I haven't used any eyeshadow primers here, so eyeshadows may crease a little bit, as you can see right here. And yeah, some shimmers may fall off as well. But I think that matte eyeshadows haven't faded. Time for the second look, and today we're gonna try these three shades, and as well I wanna try this shade as the darkest shade. And we're gonna do something simple, more or less simple, at least for me, as I don't really have much time today. Today is a working day, so I should do my makeup quite quickly. I'm gonna start from the darkest shade, and of course on this side I'm gonna use eyeshadow base, on this side no. No. Let's start. And we're gonna start from the outer corner. Well, this shade is quite pigmented. Again, it is a mix of brown and red. Burgundy. Starting blending everything out. And it's possible to layer this shade. Switching the brush and gonna add the same shade on the lower lid in the outer corner. Changing the brush, and I'm gonna use this shade as a crease shade. It's slightly dusty, which is expected because this shade contains shimmers. And starting from the darker shade. It appears as gray in the palette, but it's not gray. Interesting. Okay. Very strange, but may happen. Now I'm gonna use this shade for blending everything into skin. I'm impressed and I'm slightly surprised. Blending the edges and making sure that all the shades are blended into skin. Now I'm gonna use this beautiful shimmer, grabbing it on a flat brush. Oh, it looks beautiful. And starting applying it from the center. Beautiful shade. Oh yes, very beautiful. But I think that I've seen something familiar already. Anyway, applying a little bit more in the center. And of course, applying a bit over the crease. I like this shade, looks beautiful. Switching to the lower lid, and I'm gonna use this dark shade as a transition shade on the lower lid. Basic metallic, nothing special, but works nicely and doesn't really emphasize skin texture, so it's good. Now, in the inner corner, I'm gonna apply a highlighter from Anastasia Beverly Hills. It's Aurora Glow Kit, and I'm grabbing a little bit of this beautiful shade Helga, and it should work nicely today. Yeah, good match. Now, near the lash line, I'm gonna add black eyeliner. And as well, I'm gonna add it in the lash line right here. And of course, I'm gonna blend edges slightly. And in the waterline, I'm gonna add green eyeliner. And please never forget to blend edges slightly. I am done. And of course, I'm gonna tell you what I've used on lips. It's a lip liner Rare Beauty shade Humble and L'Oreal Glow Paradise in shade 191. And now it's time to share some thoughts. Well, it's possible to do some nice makeup look using this palette, but I'm slightly disappointed by the quality. Look at these two shades. I'm not sure whether it's visible on camera or no, but these two shades look as I've used them at least 10 times. So some shades are quite dusty, and I would say it's quite expected because it's mostly related to matte plus shimmer shades. These shimmers, of course, may fall off. Of course, especially while blending, and at some point it is expected. I think that toppers are slightly dry. They might be better. I know that Anastasia can make them better, and here they are slightly dry. They look okay on eyelid, of course, they look beautiful, but still they are slightly dry. These eyeshadows are blendable, they work together, yes, but some shades may slightly stuck while being blended, and right now everything is okay. But when I did yesterday's look, so the first makeup look, I saw some patches right here, especially on this eye. So it's possible, everything is possible, but I thought that this palette would be better, being honest. Anyway, it looks beautiful, I like the shade, and it's quite funny that this shade looks as gray in the palette, but on eyelid it looks more warm, it looks warmer, and it doesn't look gray at all. And it's quite funny and looks nicely, and it's just simply funny and interesting. Okay, and never mind. Now I'm gonna show you eye makeup closely, and we are gonna see each other in the evening. Today I have my makeup on around 13-14 hours, so yeah, it was a long day. Let's check everything out. On this side I've used an eyeshadow base, and on this side no. So yeah, of course eyeshadows may crease a bit, but not that bad, and sparkles may fall off a little bit, but not that badly as well. Seems more or less fine for 13 hours. Time for a final look, and today we are gonna have a wing and slightly smudged wing. And by the way, we haven't tried only 2 shades, so this guy is gonna be a crease shade, and this beautiful shade is gonna be on the eyelid in the center, of course. And we are gonna start from this shade and grabbing medium size brush, grabbing a little bit. Of course, this shade is slightly dusty, which is quite expected because of the shimmers. I don't know why, but this shade with shimmers works better than these two, because these two are slightly dusty. Not slightly, actually. So on this side, I'm not gonna have any eyeshadow bases. On this side, I'm gonna have, starting from the crease. Oh, it's quite pigmented. Okay, it's way too pigmented for this. Okay, anyway, already started. Blending it out in all directions. And by the way, I can use clean brush for blending edges, because I want to have not that super dark shade right here. So blending everything. Grabbing a small brush and the darkest shade from the palette. And now I'm gonna draw a wing. Starting from the lash line and drawing a wing. Nice shade for wings. Now I'm gonna apply this beautiful shade fully on the eyelid. Grabbing a little bit on a flat brush and starting from the center, of course. And applying a little bit over the crease. And I wanna add a little bit more in the center, so I'm gonna use my finger for doing this. And as you can see, on eyelid, the shade doesn't appear that pink as in the palette. Now, switching the brush, grabbing the one which is slightly bigger, and gonna use this beautiful shade for blending edges, for blending actually my wing. So let's try and let's do it. Moving to the lower lid, and I'm gonna start from this dark brown shade and gonna apply it fully on the lower lid, and of course gonna blend edges right here. In the inner corner, I'm gonna add a highlighter, pink highlighter, grabbing a little bit on a small brush and adding it directly right here. And I wanna draw as well an inner line. So grabbing a small brush, and I'm gonna use the darker shade from the palette for this. Near the lash line, I'm gonna use black eyeliner. And in the waterline, a light pink. We are done, and let me tell you what I've used today on lips. As a lip liner product from Maybelline in shade Dusty Rose, and a beautiful liquid lipstick from Yves Rocher in shade 102. By the way, I like this formula, it feels so nicely on lips, and it reminds me mousse-based textures. So lovely. And these two guys looks and works perfectly together. So let's quickly discuss. We've tried today 2 last shades, and well, I'm slightly disappointed by this palette. So I think that the quality might be far better, because Anastasia can make nice eyeshadow palettes. Here there are some troubles, I would say. There are some problems. So okay, anyway, related to this sparkle shade, it looks beautiful, but it doesn't look that pink on eyelid. Slightly, yes, but it's slightly warm at the same time, and I wanna add a little bit more of the pink on the eyelid. So I'm gonna use this beautiful shade from Meroda in shade 102. And I would say it's slightly neutral, yeah, but because of the crease shade, it appears a little bit warm, but actually it's not that warm. If you have cold undertone and if you use any other shadow palettes, and I mean matte eyeshadows, and would use this particular shade, it would be a little bit warm, but more neutral, I would say. This shade, same thing as for this one. Quality is exactly the same. It's dusty and at the same time it's quite pigmented and it's quite easy to blend this particular shade. So it may work, but it has some problems. And of course, we're going to discuss everything later on. And now I'm going to show you eye makeup look closely and we are going to see each other in the evening. I have my makeup on around 15 hours. Yes, it was a very long day. And now we are gonna check everything out. As a reminder, on this side I've used an eyeshadow primer. On this side I haven't used anything. So let's take a look. Not that bad, but still sparkles. Sparkles, yes. May crease, and it's related to all the shade we've tried. Matte eyeshadows work nicely. And on this side, yes, as well, same thing. Sparkles may crease a little bit, but on this side, the situation is slightly worse, which is expected. And matte eyeshadows look nicely. And now we are gonna discuss everything. Time to discuss everything, and we are gonna start from some basic information. This eyeshadow palette costs 31.45 euro, but you can always buy it on sales, and of course I bought it on sales, and I paid for it 28.5 euro or something like this. This eyeshadow palette is made in the USA and it has total weight around 9 grams, and being more precise, a single eyeshadow weighs around 1 gram, but being more precise, 0.95 grams. And if we compare total weight, for instance, to this eyeshadow palettes here, we have more. Single refill weights here 1.11 grams. Here we have a little bit less. Now it's time to discuss quality, and we are gonna start from matte eyeshadows. In this particular palette we have only 2 matte eyeshadows. I'm not talking about matte plus shimmers, I'm talking only about matte eyeshadows. And here the quality of these 2 shades is exactly the same. These eyeshadows are quite pigmented, it's quite easy to blend them, and they don't stuck while being blended. But this shade may stuck. We're going to discuss it a little bit later. Pigmentation is quite high and you can layer these eyeshadows. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And the formula which I personally hate, matte plus shimmers. Here we have three eyeshadows in this formula, and I'm not that happy with it. I'm gonna explain why a little bit later. So these 3 shades are made in this formula. They are dusty, of course they are, but if we compare these 2 shades to this one, I would say that these 2 are slightly more dusty. This shade is slightly better, but at the same time it may slightly stuck while being applied. It's possible to move it, but you would have to spend a little bit more time. And these guys far better from this side, but from the other side they are dusty. They're extremely dusty, and yeah, you have to be careful while working with these eyeshadows. They are quite pigmented, pigmentation is high, you can easily layer them and you can easily mix them together. So from this point of view, everything is more or less fine. Metallic shades. We have one classical metallic right here and 3 toppers. And I am impressed by the toppers. They look beautiful and they work quite nicely. Metallic shade, it's quite creamy, might be applied with a finger or with a brush, depending on what you're gonna do. It's quite creamy, it's not dry at all, and I like it. It looks beautiful, and by the way, it doesn't emphasize skin textures. Toppers might be applied with a brush or with fingers. And if you want to see slightly brighter result, use your fingers. And in this case, everything is going to be more than just fine. These toppers, they don't really have visible base, so it's far better to apply them over something. For instance, you can apply this beautiful metallic shade on your upper lid, and above you can apply any toppers and everything is going to be fine. Of course, you can apply these toppers as it is, depending on the situation and depending on your look. Anyway, they work quite nicely. Sorry, I have to take some breaks time to time today as it's quite noisy outside and my neighbors are mowing the lawn, so sorry. Moving on. We are more or less done with the quality, but as a sum up, I can tell you that there are some shades which I don't really like because of the quality. Because when you start blending these matte plus shimmers simply fall off while being blended and it doesn't look that good, and you may actually think that it's because of the toppers you have some falloffs right here, but not really. The main reason is related to these 3 shades and it's not that convenient in my personal opinion. Now let's quickly discuss color story and each single shade. I like this color story and it would work nicely in case of warm or neutral undertones. If you have cold undertone, I suggest you buying this palette because this guy is going to be way too warm for you. But this palette is going to be far better in your case because it's quite cold and it has quite many, let's say, shades which contain a bit of gray. This palette doesn't have any gray eyeshadows. It may appear that this shade is gray. It's not gray. It's not gray at all. It doesn't have anything gray in it because as soon as you start applying this shade on your eyelid, as soon as you start blending it, it's visible that this shade is warm and slightly orange. So if you have extremely cold undertone, if you have extremely pale skin, this palette is not really yours. You can definitely use some shades here, but if you don't like orange shades, you definitely wouldn't like this particular palette as it may appear slightly orange on you. Of course, you can use these burgundy shades, and by the way, these shades look exactly the same on eyelid, and I don't really know what for. We do need 2 familiar shades here. Anyway, so if you are pale, not your choice. Try this palette. Now, we are going to discuss quickly all shades, and we are going to start from matte eyeshadows and from this beautiful shade. In the palette, it appears a little bit pink and I would say cold pink, but it's not pink, cold pink at all. It's warm pink and it looks beautiful. This shade is really complicated. It is a mix of beige, I would say, pink and something warm, a little bit of orange. Beautiful shade for daily looks and beautiful shade as a crease shade. Works nicely and looks beautiful. The second matte shade from this palette is burgundy, I would say. But it's not that red. I would say it is a mix of dark brown and dark red. Looks beautiful, works nicely, easy to blend, works perfectly with these 2 shades. And I like the quality of this particular matte eyeshadow. Now we are moving to matte plus shimmers. And we are gonna start from this beautiful shade. which is slightly tricky, which appears in the palette as gray, but in real life, it's not gray at all. Not at all. Not at all. Well, it is a mix of beige and a bit of orange and a bit of light brown. Shimmers here, fully silver, and when you start applying the shade, shimmers fall off and you don't really see it on your eyelid. You see a little bit, but not a lot. And anyway, this shade is a beautiful crease shade and it works nicely. Yes, actually, it has a little bit of gray, but not that much. So bear in mind. And by the way, on the eyelid as well, it appears a little bit red. So I like the shade. It's complicated, but it's not a good choice in case of cold undertone. Moving on, this beautiful shade. When I applied it first time, I didn't thought that it's so pigmented. It's extremely pigmented, but unfortunately dusty. It is brown plus orange, and in case of cold undertone, it would appear extremely orange, so be careful. Shimmers here, pink and a little bit of golden. This shimmer may stay in place for a while, but it depends where you're gonna use this particular shade. I tried to use it as a crease shade, works nicely, but of course, as I had to blend it out a lot, all shimmers were right here, which is expected. Now, this lovely shade, this guy plus a bit of shimmer. Let's quickly even compare these two shades. Let me do some swatches. On my eyelid, I think that they are the same. Not really. Here we have a little bit more red undertone. Here we have a little bit less. And that's the only difference. And as well, here we have silver shimmers inside. And that's it. And as I've already told you, if we compare these two shades, these two guys are going to be slightly more dusty, so bear in mind and please be careful while applying the shade. If you want to be sure that you won't have any fall-offs, grab a brush, grab a little bit of a product, tap of extra, or you can pat a little bit on your hand, and by doing this you're kind of removing extras from your brush, and in this case you're gonna have less fall-offs and everything is gonna be fine. Plus control your movements and as well control how much product you're taking with your brush. It's quite crucial as well. Now moving to this beautiful shade, dark brown plus golden. Beautiful shade and beautiful transition shade. And as I've already told you, or I haven't told you, anyway, you can use this metallic eyeshadow before applying any toppers. And in this case, everything is going to be fine because toppers don't really have visible base. And it just simply like additional glitters, and it may work and it does work nicely, but if you want to apply a little bit less, you can use this metallic shade and over you can apply a bit of shimmers and it would work nicely and beautiful. Doesn't emphasize skin texture and I've already told it to you. Now, toppers. And it's quite interesting. My two, why two? I like all of them actually, but this particular shade, which is slightly pink, may slightly drier than the other ones. So let's start from this shade. It appears in the palette as neutral, but it's not neutral, of course. It's slightly warm, it's a mix of pink and champagne, works nicely, looks beautiful, and perfect shade for some daily looks. If you apply it with this eyeshadow, it would appear more warm, but if you apply this topper with any cold eyeshadows, it would appear a little bit colder or a little bit more neutral. So bear in mind, beautiful shade, and I like the way it looks on eyelid, and it's a nice choice in case of simple daily looks. my love, my true love. I like this shade. It shifts slightly from golden to green and has a little bit of pink. I'm impressed. Actually, I have several familiar shades in other palettes from Anastasia, and we are gonna compare a little bit. This shade is slightly flaky, slightly, so just simply take into account and apply carefully. It shifts beautiful and it looks beautiful, doesn't emphasize skin texture. Now I'm gonna compare this shade to Anastasia Beverly Hills Cosmos, and here we have a beautiful shade which is called Kazar, but actually it's not gonna be exactly the same because this shade has a little bit of purple. And this guy is more shimmery and appears more like a topper, while this guy is more on metallic shade, I would say. As well, if you have this palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills, we have a shade which is called Crown right here. And it's also quite familiar, but it's more metallic, first of all. And I think it's just simply drier. But the shades, they look quite familiar, but personal preferences. I like this topper a little bit more, and I like this beautiful metallic. I'm not a big fan of this palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills because of the quality. Here we have quite many dry eyeshadows which don't really work the way they should work. Only one shade is left, and let me quickly show it to you one more time. It looks beautiful on eyelid. It might be used in case of some daily looks, or in case of smoky eyes, or in case of events. I like it, and it shifts slightly from, actually it has a little bit of brown, pink, golden, and a bit of beige. So actually I like it. It's quite complicated and looks beautiful. And of course it doesn't have a visible base. Be careful while applying these three shades because shimmers, well, they may slightly fall off while being applied, so just simply be careful. If we compare this eyeshadow palette to this one, for instance, I would prefer this palette. And let me explain you why. First of all, I'm not a big fan of such shimmery matte eyeshadows because they don't really work the way they should work, and all shimmers always in the under eye area as a result. So I don't really like it. Moreover, in most of the cases, such shimmers, they are not shimmers, sorry, matte eyeshadows, they are slightly dry in case of Anastasia Beverly Hills. As an example, Sugar Palette, and actually in Sugar Palette we have two extremely dry shades here, and they are quite familiar to these two shades from Fallen, what do we call it? Fall Romance from Anastasia. And this palette is the worst from Anastasia from quality point of view. But it's possible to work with these eyeshadows anyway. It's possible to do something with them, but I wish we didn't really have them. If we compare these two palettes from quality point of view, Spice. From color story point of view, Sugar, because it's just simply a little bit more complicated, and if you like some bright looks, you would probably prefer this palette. If you wanna have a palette for daily looks, Spice palette, especially if you have warm or neutral undertone. If you have cold undertone, Sugar, you don't really have a big choice. And if we compare shimmers here, same formula. They behave exactly the same. But here we have slightly worse quality. Unfortunately, that's life, but yeah, it happens. Final thoughts and impression. I wish we had different quality. I wish we had better quality because I know and we know that Anastasia Beverly Hills can do better. As a sample, beautiful palette Cosmos, beautiful palette which is called Nouveau, and some others. Here, everything is not that great and it might be better. But of course, I'm gonna use this palette. Of course, I'm gonna be careful while using this palette. And yeah, we do have some nice shades here. And of course, it's up to you to decide whether you need this palette or no. If you have a chance to touch this palette before buying it, I suggest using it, because in this case you can easily decide whether you need it or no. And we are more or less done for today. Let me know down below what do you think about this palette and what do you think about the looks you've seen today. And if you don't know what to write, just simply leave several emojis or just simply write Anastasia Beverly Hills and it would help the channel to grow. If you like this video, please don't forget to put a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I wish you a pleasant day and I hope to see you soon in the next video. Bye bye.